Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
He's the Mike Reiner.
Or
George Dunham.
George and Craig.
Right.
To a certain
Yeah,
level.
right near the lake.
And who's the other, the older?
Ordo?
It's definitely managed.
Gordon Keith?
No,
Like
older
Fernando?
guy. He's on with the.
In the process of trying to get sold.
He's on in the afternoons,
Mm.
or no, mid mornings.
Oh, Norm Hiskins.
Norm
So,
Hiskus.
and where I'm at is it's on a slope.
You know
It's
nothing.
about 40 miles to get to the
No, Bible study.
I
Go.
know nothing. All right. Hey, Sean.
Jesus.
Will you shut the door so that when the kids start ringing, we can't hear them, which they likely will in short order.
Do you have time to
Doing the parade.
All right.
No.
Thanks for coming to hang out tonight. We are. It feels like forever since we've been here.
Oh, no.
And it's only been 2 weeks, I think.
Forever.
2 weeks feels like a long time.
You went through the plague and everything.
That's what I did. I emerged out the other side of the plague. We are going to continue with Walter Brueggemann and the second chapter, which is on food. Food is important, an important thing for all of us. What isn't food on the very bottom of Maslow's hierarchy?
Yeah.
Food.
Sure it is.
Sure, we're gonna go with that.
Absolutely.
I'll tell you in a
We're gonna
second.
go with that. But creatures with bodies need food. As you recall, this whole book is about the reason that that I chose this particular book for Advent time is because Walter's whole argument is that he is not such a, and this is what we have different opinions about what this entails, but he is disenchanted with an emphasis on spirituality because he thinks that that has a tendency, and it may, in some circles, to sort of let our eyes drift away from the world to the heavens. So you've probably heard the phrase that a person is so heavenly minded that they're of no earthly good. That is what Walter has in mind when he talks about spirituality. That is not, again, I made this point last time we met, but that is not, in fact, what I mean when I talk about spirituality. I think spirituality is the thing that roots us to the world in a right and good way.
Because everything is spiritual.
Because everything is spiritual. I only spent like a month banging that drum, so hopefully we're all on the same page about that. But so we turn to food and the implications of how we eat and where we eat from and what our food chain looks like and how farming and those sorts of things get done, because these are, if you would be so inclined to go with me on the phrase that even our eating is a moral choice, especially for those of us who have means to make those choices, Walter will make an argument for us. Before we begin, what ought we to pray about or give thanks for?
It's Margot's 39th birthday on Friday.
Woo!
Oh, yeah.
Margot!
With about 25 years of wisdom.
Angela came home today, I believe.
That is what I heard. I did not have an opportunity to give a ring, but that's great news. We ought to pray for Terry Stevenson. I don't know how many of you are on the prayer chain, but Terry this week is she had suffered a sexual assault in a hospital a little while ago, and she is on trial this week, taking the stand. So she was on the stand yesterday for like 3 hours.
Oh my God.
And their only defense is to tear her apart. And I'm not speaking out of school, and Terry will be the first to tell you that she was an alcoholic and a drug user for like 20 years. And so there's plenty in her past for them to dig up to try to discredit her and smear her character. So it's just really hard. I mean, you can imagine just sitting there and being,
That's a risky approach.
yeah, it's tough. But So yeah, we'll pray for her. I check in with her yet today. I'll give her a call after we're done here, but hopefully, she'll be done being on the stand today. She said for sure 2 days, and maybe 3. So, yeah, there's that. We'll pray for Terry. What else? What else is going on? James Morris died. Jimmy Morris died last week. His funeral's here on Saturday. He was a big Alabama fan. He and Doris met at Alabama, and he was born in Birmingham, and met Doris in Tuscaloosa, but he apparently was doing really, really poorly, but like hung on through the game and died like
Oh my gosh.
That's how they go.
That's not sad.
I know, it's not. It's
That's
great.
awesome.
It's amazing. Like the man got this, and it was. I don't know if you were paying attention, but it was the big rival game. It was Auburn,
The Iron Bowl.
versus Alabama. So, yeah, he had to hang on
who won?
to see.
He did.
Was it Alabama?
Alabama.
There you go.
Yep.
A parting gift.
By a bunch.
Aw.
A parting gift.
Wow.
At any rate.
Oh. Prayers for my friend Andrea, who I just found out that her mother has terminal cancer. And her mother's name is escaping me right now, but
That's okay.
so Andrea and family.
Gail, Jennifer Painter's mother, broke her ankle and is having a heck of a time of it. So we'll remember her in our prayers.
The Grill family are good friends. They lost. Mark lost his mom last week at 90 something. Married for 70 years.
Mm-hmm.
He died yesterday. The dad.
Oh,
Yeah, he lasted about 3 days.
wow.
Yeah, true love, I tell you. It was so.
Goodness
They're
gracious.
suddenly orphaned. They're more worried about their kids are young adults, and this is the first death they've gone through. So pray for their family
Yeah.
handling it.
Oh yeah, one other thing about Jimmy Morris's death. It was Doris's birthday on Saturday when he died. And she died about a year ago, January of last year. Doris Morris.
I mean, that's great.
Yeah, happy
Such a great
birthday to
name.
her. Wow.
Doris and
Yeah,
Morris.
that's a nice gift.
Surprise.
Happy
Yeah.
birthday.
It was like, finish that game and.
Exactly. That's right.
I'm waiting.
All right, let's pray. Gracious God, you meet us in every place in our lives. You play on our stage, and we just are so grateful for that you meet us in our hardships and rejoice with us in our joys, and you know what it is like to live in this place and in a body, because you came to us in Jesus. And so in this season of Advent, help us to be waiting and watching. Help us to be mindful of the ways that we embody or not the kingdom of God. And we just pray, God, as we have lifted up our concerns to you and the people that are near and dear to our hearts, and those with whom our thoughts go, we just pray that you too would remember them, and that you would meet them in the ways that they need you now, whether that is strength, or whether that is healing, or comfort, or hope in this season. We just pray, God, that you'd meet us and be that which we need you to be in this moment. As we turn our attention to study this evening, we pray that you'd open our minds, give us inquisitive hearts and openness of mind to hear what it is that you are saying to us this evening. we are grateful for the opportunity to be together, and we pray that you bless this time that we are having. All this we ask in the name and for the sake of Jesus, who is our Lord and our friend. Amen. All right. To Walter Brueggemann we turn.
You mentioned food.
Whoa! Again, it's food tonight.
You mentioned food and materiality. What is?
Well, it has to.
Again, the subtitles are just so bad. Did you see it?
Martyriality. That's the first thing I noticed.
Martyriality. What is that?
Martyriality. I thought there was a new word I didn't
It's
know.
not.
Materiality.
Anyway, and you might remember in the promo video that we watched, they sing a minute. It's really long in this particular video, so just bear with me.
What is?
Well, it has to do with the processes of production, distribution, and consumption
Can everybody hear?
in the presence of the neighbor.
What does that have to do with Christian people?
Well, it has to do with the care for the earth. So all of the environmental, ecological concerns, and what we know from Wendell and many other people is that a family farm in the long run is more productive and more sustainable than agribusiness. So that's on the production end of it. That contradicts the mandate of capitalism that some time ago the Secretary of Agriculture said, get big or get out. And the alternative is to, I suppose, get serious about the reality of the earth and its productive capacity. So that's kind of what I would say about production.
You talk about invitation from consumers to citizens and creatures of God. What do you mean by citizen?
Well, citizens are people who are active participants in the public process. And when the church focuses upon spirituality, public questions never seem to be on the horizon in any important or sustained way. So the tradition of Calvin, in which I stand, Calvin was the great public theologian of all of the reformers, and he really intended that the practice of citizenship should be a practice of serious discipleship. And I think either that in the United States Christians have defaulted and not been participants, or they have participated but they have forgotten their baptism, and so we act according to other ideologies rather than the claims of our faith. So the recovery of a sense of citizenship, which would bring with it a sense that paying taxes is a Christian enterprise, and that we have to think about who gets taxed and what that tax money goes for, and all of that.
You think Calvin would think, that part of the church's role in discipleship would be shaping and stirring the imagination around scarcity and abundance?
I think that's exactly right. Yep. And because if if an institution like the church, and one might think of other allies, if the church doesn't raise those questions, who's going to raise those questions? And what happens is that the ideology of scarcity simply wins by default, so that capitalism has evolved, whatever it was intended, it's evolved to saying there's not enough to go around and I have to be sure I get my share, and if I can, I'd like to get some of your share. That's all on the assumption of scarcity, and the claim of the gospel, of course, is that the God of abundance has provided and continues to provide more than enough for all of us, were it rightly and faithfully distributed. But we're locked in to policies and procedures and practices that intend that not to happen. And I think the most obvious illustration of that is the new regressive tax policy that has been recently enacted, which was to reduce taxation on wealthy people in order that they may accumulate at a more rapid rate. And that means that the government goes underfunded, and that means that the government can't have the kinds of programs that are needed to sustain the left behind. And obviously that was very intentional. The intention is to reduce the revenue that the government has available, and then to say, well, we can't fund these programs, we don't have any money.
Oh, it was to lubricate the trickle-downness.
Oh, that's true, I forgot that, yes.
And left behind, you're not talking about people that were not, it's not a rapture thing?
No, it's not a rapture thing. It is being excommunicated from viability in the economy. Peter Block talks about that as people who are economically isolated. And if you're isolated, you do not benefit from, contribute to, or have access to the goods of the community.
And you think part of the role of the church is to seek out that isolated?
The role of the church is to imagine and advocate for policies that will help connect the economically isolated to the ongoing reality of the public economy.
What a liberal.
The word that you use for it is what a neighbor. It is not about being liberal or progressive or socialist. It's about being neighborly. And the church does itself a great disservice when it prances about under labels of liberal or progressive or any of that. It's not about any of that. Those are not biblical categories. The category is neighborliness. And that's our mantra. This is our story.
This is our song.
Praising the Savior.
All the day long.
It's a lot.
Sorry. Spirit. Can you have the spirit? You're,
of course.
Okay.
Yep.
What is the role of the spirit? What is this?
The role.
I thought you were into spirituality.
I'm not into an over appreciation of spirituality. No, what we say is the Spirit heals, renews, empowers, and transforms, makes new. And what that means, if you think that we live in a technological world of predictable causes and outcomes, the Spirit is the strange disruptor of our capacity to control. And what we know is that all of our best learning cannot domesticate God's Spirit, that God's Spirit will work where it will.
You say that like what's blocking us from receiving those new imaginations outside of our own net will?
Well, because I think the dominant ideology is to get control. And the Spirit cannot be controlled. The Spirit, it's like the wind. It blows where it will, and it endlessly opens closed doors and surprises us. And the church has often thought that it could determine where the Spirit would be permitted to be, but the Spirit doesn't wait for the permission of the church.
I thought that was just a mature thing, is to try and predict the future and project and this kind of thing.
I suppose it may be, but it doesn't work. It works a lot of the time, but it doesn't work all the time. I just heard this example. There's a graduate of Columbia Seminary where I taught. He's a pastor in a little bitty town in South Carolina, and it came about that an immigrant community built a mosque in town in South Carolina. And this pastor had the compelling idea that church people ought to relate to mosque people. So it came to a vote to get rid of the pastor. They couldn't tolerate that. They lost that vote. And now in this little community, these folks are living together with respect and engagement. It is the work of the Spirit. Who in the world knew that that would happen? Now it happened because this pastor and some other wise people had a sense about how to bring this about, but they were led by the Spirit. They were led by the Spirit to enact newness that I imagine they thought wasn't possible.
That sounds good newsy.
It is very good, or it is evangelical, to coin a word.
That could work. Yeah, I mean, it seems like if fish were made to live in water, like if creatures were created to live in the neighborhood, what do you imagine that like? What's the gifts and the fruit and what happens in the neighborhood?
Well,
I mean, is it just
given-
policy and
gi-
getting something right? Like what's,
given the,
what happens in abundance if
yeah,
abundance is grown in the neighborhood?
everybody flourishes. Everybody flourishes.
What does that
Now,
mean?
some are flourishing with more abundance than others. I'm not blind to social inequalities that are intransigent. But it can be that everybody gets looked after. And rural communities tend to do that. Rural communities tend to take care of poor people because everybody knows everybody. The problem is when you get to mass culture or urban society, then you need policies. You need policies that will make the sharing of goods and care and mercy and compassion and justice and righteousness, that whole catalog. You need policies that help people live in, with, and toward the neighbor.
As long as somebody doesn't work less than me and get the same amount of money,
Exactly.
then I'll be all right with it.
I think being sick broke my brain. So I forgot a Bible. I think there's a Bible in that cupboard. Yeah. Thank you, Margot.
Yep.
He makes a more thorough argument about what exactly he's talking about in his chapter about food in this book. But at the end of the day, what he's trying to get you to see is that the dominant way that our culture tries to make us view ourselves is as, well, what do you think? He has an idea. You'll probably agree when I say it out loud, but how do you think that you are pressed to see yourself as an actor in society?
As a success.
As a success?
As a consumer.
That it is, right? Commercial. I had this conversation the other day with a friend of mine. I've been watching a lot of World Cup soccer because I'm a soccer fan, like an ardent soccer fan, every other year. And one of the things I love about soccer, and one of the things I love about the World Cup, but it's nonstop play. It's what I like about F1 races too. Is there are no freaking commercials. Football, on the other hand, not only has commercials because it like play stops very, very frequently in football, but also there are television timeouts, right? This game is monetized because why else are they showing it, right? Television companies sell advertising dollars. This is how it works. The whole thing is built on trying to get you to buy a product.
Well,
all of it.
And even like I went down 2 or 3 weeks ago to A&M game, and it wasn't until like 2 weeks before that game that I even knew what the starting time was. And again, that's the television, determines, okay, well, we've got this opening for you at 6:30 or at 11 or at 2:30 or what have you.
Yeah.
So
yeah, the entire world is just trying to get you to buy something.
Mm-hmm.
Pretty much, right? You are a consumer, and one of the basics of the way that works is this overriding sense that either you're being sold a product that they want you to have, and they try to sell it to you on the basis of you can have this and very few other people have it, therefore it's special, right? But like so much of our economy is based on scarcity, right? The sense of there isn't enough to go around, and so you gotta have, and he,
or that if you don't have this, you won't be as good as you can be.
for sure.
Which provides, I think, a whole lot of anxiety to everyone.
Yep. And
that wasn't there 50 years ago.
well, not only that, but there is a sense in which, and I think it is a product largely of how we're being sold this sense of we have to be a consumer, is that we tend to believe that we should never be in any discomfort, right? That like there is a fix, that I can purchase a fix for everything that might make me mildly discomfortable, which is weird. Colleen and I actually were just talking about this the other night with Elliot, and she was like, I'm realizing like how much I want to shield him from like any discomfort in life, So she's like, he's going to this stupid little holiday shop. I'm sure you know about these, right? Where they have like this chintzy crap that kids can buy in the library, and parents send their kids with $10, and they come out with 45 gifts somehow, because it's all like from the Oriental Trading Company magazine, like. But she was like, maybe I should go and just like be there when he's there, because like what if he tries to buy something he doesn't have enough money for, right? And she's like, I don't want them to feel bad. And I'm like, I've lived my entire growing up was, no, we don't have money for that. Matter of fact, my kids make fun of me because I always say, we ain't got money for that, like all the time in our house, which is just my way of saying, we're not going to do that, right? But I think that it is like this natural thing, and that all of us do this in some way, right? Whether it's for ourselves or for our children, like we want to purchase a way or find a way out of any sort of discomfort. And I was thinking about that when it comes to food, because I find, unless I'm very, very mindful of it, that if I feel hungry at all, I try to fix that problem. It's weird. It's weird, right? And we live in a society, especially here now with the people that I'm talking to in this room, we live in a society in which food is ultra available to us. Right? Food has never been more available to you, especially if you're willing to slap a few more dollars down for Uber Eats, right? Like somebody will bring you food, whatever you want, in like 30 minutes.
They pay a lot of money. Mason does DoorDash now, and he makes $20 an hour easy.
I'm sure.
People are paying crazy money.
Oh yeah.
Megan's saying
To not
she
get out of the
just
house.
calls her
That-
Not leave.
Oh, I thought you were saying that Deb buys a lot of Uber Eats, and I was like, this is surprising to me, honestly.
Sometimes.
No, I say I'm hungry and then magically food appears.
That's fantastic. But yeah, it's everywhere, and all of our desires for food can be met very, very easily. Even if what I'm experiencing is like the mildest possible version of discomfort, right? Like, oh, I think I might be hungry. Like that, again, my children, like all children, ask for snacks like every 17 minutes.
That long?
All day long, nonstop. And I tell them to drink water. Because they're not hungry, they just haven't touched their water bottle that they asked me to fill for a week and a half. You know, like anyway, all that to say, because we are fed a steady diet of things that we're supposed to consume to make us feel better. And also, this isn't even to mention like all of our probably mildly dysfunctional relationships with food, wherein we mask our other feelings, other than I'm mildly hungry, we mask our other feelings with food too, right? Like, and we can do that because food is ultra available to us. And it is so available, and there's so much money, or if there's not money, there's crap products for you to buy that don't cost much, that one of the things that's literally killing us in the United States specifically, and in the developed world, the first world, whatever you want to call it, the wealthiest of nations, is heart disease, right? Because we fill ourselves up with crap all the time, and if we are just a little bit hungry, I'll eat a bag of peanut M&Ms, right? Like, it's not good for us. We have a very strange
It's legal.
It is. It's legal, and you know, your brain does happy things when you eat, right? Like, it is like you get a
Endorphins.
free dopamine hit when you eat good food. So yeah, it is a drug. Not to mention the amount. Have you ever tried to buy granola bars that don't have a lot of sugar in them?
Good luck.
Holy crap!
What's the definition of granola?
It's true.
Yeah, it is.
It just doesn't exist. There's so much sugar in everything. Anyway,
But you know, I guess to me the saddest thing is that we around this table realize that's what we do, and we're perpetuating it on our kids
Yeah.
every day,
yeah.
myself included. I mean, it's oh my God, you can't fail. Oh my gosh, swooping in and saving the day. You know what? I can remember when I was a kid. Oh, you forgot your lunch?
Right.
Eat when you get home.
Sorry, man.
I mean, and we survived.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
And, I was at Costco yesterday and I saw this bottle of maple syrup aged in bourbon barrels.
All 14 gallons of it.
Well, it was actually about that size of a bottle, and I bought it.
You had to. How are you going to do anything other?
How can I have pancakes without
Right.
this?
No,
But it is like a scarcity complex, and also what he was talking a little bit here, met with this control complex that we have, right? Which is a bad combo. But he talks about reorienting ourselves around this idea not of scarcity and abundance, or scarcity versus abundance and leaning more into scarcity, but trusting that the God who created the universe to be this place that sustains itself can actually sustain itself, right? We'll read this scripture really quick. This is Mark 6:37 to 44. Well, that is a weird place to start. This is the feeding of the 5,000 in Mark. But Jesus answered them, "You give them something to eat." And they said to him, "Are we to go and buy 200 denarii worth of bread and give it to them to eat?" And he said to them, "How many loaves do you have? Go see." And when they had found out, they said, 5, and 2 fish. And he ordered them to get all the people to sit down in groups on the green grass. So they sat down in groups of hundreds and fifties. Taking the 5 loaves and the 2 fish, he looked up to heaven and blessed and broke the loaves and gave them to his disciples to set before the people. And he divided the 2 fish among them all. And all ate, and all were filled. And they took up 12 baskets full of broken pieces and of the fish. And those who had eaten the loaves numbered 5,000 men. A story of abundance, right? Everybody eats with little, and there's some left over. Here's Luke 12, which is the parable of the rich fool. Someone in the crowd said to him, "Teacher, tell my brother to divide the family inheritance with me." But he said to them, "Friend, who sent me to be a judge or arbiter over you?" And he said to them, "Take care. Be on your guard against all kinds of greed, for one's life does not consist in the abundance of possessions." Then he told them a parable. The land of a rich man produced abundantly, and he thought to himself, "What should I do? For I have no place to store my crops." And then he said, "I will do this. I will pull down my barns and build bigger ones. And there I will store all my grain and my goods. And I will say to my soul, soul," that's actually in the text. "I will say to my soul, soul, you have ample goods laid up for many years. Relax, eat, drink, and be merry." But God said to him, "You fool, this very night your life is being demanded of you. And the things you have prepared, whose will they be? So it is with those who store up treasures for themselves, but are not rich toward God." Brueggemann describes the farmer in that parable as someone who was a victim of imagined scarcity, right? His barns were full. He had more than enough. He just had a bumper crop. And instead of viewing himself, this is the other move that Brueggemann makes in the book that I think is really helpful as a way to sort of reconsider our role, is not as consumer first, but as a member of the community, right? And as, what's the other one? As a member of the community and as well, now I can't find it. Oh, yeah. Members of the community and creatures among other creatures. If you are if you are fully bought into, and I think we all are, just sort of without thinking about it, because it's, does a fish know it's in water kind of deal. Like, we're all sort of bought into this idea that we are consumers and that there's a scant amount of goods to be had, and we're all sort of in competition with each other to get them. And whether we would actually say that out loud or not, like, I think if we drilled down far enough into what we all actually believe, that exists somewhere in us.
Well, that's part of our lizard brain there.
Yeah.
And
part of the lizard brain that capitalism exploits.
Yeah, and COVID did kind of make us go, oh yeah, this could happen.
Yeah.
Yeah, it could happen a lot worse than
We got to
it
get
actually
toilet
did.
paper.
That's true. Toilet paper. God help
Well,
us.
yeast. Yeah. For
Yeah.
bread.
Well, there was a lot, but he wants to shift us from consumers with a scarcity mindset into thinking of ourselves as members of community and creatures among other creatures, which takes into consideration both how I receive goods, right, what the chain is to their getting to me, and then what I do with them once I have them. So if we look back at the example of the guy who has more than enough and just has a bumper crop, and instead of doing something else, the only thing that he can imagine to do, because he's been so formed, is to build bigger barns. I have more than I can handle. I guess I have to build a bigger barn. Because he's a consumer in a scarcity mindset. But if he views himself as a member of the community, he's got more options, doesn't he? And those options are share it.
Live with an open hand.
Yes, give it away. There's somebody in the neighborhood who doesn't have anything to eat, almost assuredly, right? Like, the reason the Israelites had things built into the way that they lived, such that every handful of years, land and things would go back to their original owners. The reason, we don't actually not have any evidence that this actually happened, but it was supposed to, right? The year of Jubilee, everything would return to its original owner. And the reason that God built that into Israel's law is because God knew the human condition, right? He knew that people were going to eventually get worked out of what was theirs, rightfully theirs, and that there were going to be people who were going to be marginalized. Actually, he mentions it really briefly. He talks about the poor as economically isolated, which I think is a very helpful term, because it helps us to get out of consumer mindset, right? Some people made bad choices, blah, 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 blah. They're in the scarcity realm. And it helps us to think about our economy and how we share as a function of community and being citizens together of something. But yeah, that's the big shift. That's the big shift that Walter is trying to get across to us. But it doesn't just influence how we share. He's making this bigger point about, like, the systems at play, right? And this is where things get really dicey when it comes to what do you do then? Like, because he is advocating for sure for us to take a stab at rejiggering how things work, right? He's taken a prod to the failings of agribusiness. I mean, the promise is we're going to make more. Why? Well, we'll be able to feed everybody. Is the world's hunger fixed? Like, no, it has not. Like, yeah, there's tons of food, but it does not make it where it needs to go. And that is a problem of more than just how we make it. It's a problem of distribution. And what he is arguing for is for the things to become more local, because the more local it is, the more you know your neighbors, the less likely it is that people drop through the cracks. That sort of thing. He brought up an interesting point in the video about the move from things might work in rural America where everybody knows everybody else, but when you move into an urban situation, you have to rely on policy instead. I hadn't ever really thought, I hadn't put that one together ever.
It's 100% accurate too, because I grew up in a very small town
Mhm.
and a very poor small town, but everyone knew everyone and had everyone's back. It's like, you need food, come get out of my garden.
Yeah.
I'll bring an extra dozen eggs to you. And the church was even a bigger part of the community because it brought people together and you got to know people better and understand their wants and needs. So, granted, I grew up in a Baptist community, so a little different, but still, it was that central area that the community could come together and know each other on a deeper level as well.
Yep. It's very easy to get lost here. There's just so many people, you know. Like, how many people live in Flower Mound? 75,000, something like that. Somewhere in the ballpark, right?
If somebody stands on a corner in rural America, they're gonna get fat.
Yeah.
They line up on the corner out here and we drive right by them every day.
It's too much. So how do we fix that? Is what Brueggemann is encouraging Christians specifically to think about, right?
Well,
These are
I think-
material problems.
I think it's a mixed bag because I believe in paying taxes, you know, for the betterment of the society. I just don't trust anybody to make those decisions. I mentioned this to you last week. I'd rather give you $1 billion because I trust you more than I do anybody in Washington, D.C.
Whenever you're ready.
But, so I think it falls upon, you know, okay, we're just going to keep giving them money. But I think that some of that money was redirected into, instead of having federalized social welfare nets, having more homegrown community-based safety nets, because it's going to work better and more efficiently. I mean, there's always going to be graft and stuff like that, but
yeah. I just think, you know, without like digging into the weeds of a policy discussion in this particular room, we do give, there is money being given and taxes being written off for these large companies, and then we do say, well, we don't have money for this or that thing, you know? It's just, again, the point today is, buy local. Right. Consider what you can do with your spending. Also, when we consider what it means to be a creature among creatures, that's the other deal. Like, dude, I don't know if you've done any reading or research or watching about what factory farming is like, but it is freaking terrible. As just like creatures who are creatures among creatures, right? Like God's eye is on the sparrow. God's eye is also on the chicken in the factory farm that lives in squalor. It's for the 3 months that it's actually alive. You know what I'm saying? Like, I'm not saying you need to all go be vegans. I'm not gonna be a vegan anytime soon. However,
but yeah, things haven't changed that much since Upton Sinclair was writing.
Right.
Yeah, it's still the same. We just don't see it, and as long as we don't see it, it's okay.
Yeah.
that's a blast from the past. Upton Sinclair.
Upton Sinclair, remember we all had to read it. In high school.
I think that we should all go in together and buy a pig and a cow. That's what we should do.
I'm in.
I don't have a freezer, but this is
for your backyard or
Don't we have
where are we going to
backyard.
slaughter it?
Oh,
there you go.
If I get to shoot it.
We can do a chicken coop. There you go. Yeah, I think it is important to consider the ways that we can spend ethically, even
We
if
could
it's
get
not,
some chickens
even if
going.
it's
We
not
got
going to
plenty
like
of
change the lives of everybody. Like, for us to make moral choices is important because we're in bodies and we care about things that have bodies, and these are decisions we can make together. Anyway, yeah, I was hoping he would get, because without you guys having read the book, I got to pick up a lot of the pieces. That wasn't a particularly good one. And also, somebody walked through the middle of it. What are you doing?
Took their grandma upstairs.
Yeah, like-
Let me ask you some questions.
Yeah, it does. Anyway, all right. Next week is the
Coup de grace.
no, the kids pageant. So we're gonna be down there with them, singing a little bit.
Oh my gosh.
and watching them
We got
do their
lots
thing.
of
Watching
So
that
you
hot
should come
mess,
and
that's
hang
gonna
out.
be great.
It'll be fun, but we're not gonna have Bible study then. And then I haven't made my mind up on whether we're gonna do a Bible study the week before Christmas. We might be done for a little while, and we'll come back in January.
Yeah.
Anyway, grace and peace to you. Thanks for hanging out.